So this video is something I've wanted to talk about for a while now, but didn't really have a set plan on how to tackle it. And I know it's going to be controversial, but I think it's worth talking about, especially since I have seen so much hate towards bass fishermen. So today I want to look at the good and the bad of bass fishing to see if bass fishing as a whole is overrated. Starting off with some of the positives of bass fishing, I wanted to start with the wide variety of different ways you can go about targeting a bass. Simply put, there are a lot of different ways you can land yourself a big bass, and that's definitely a plus for them. You want to drop a soft plastic at the bottom? Go for it. You like topwater fishing? Bass like it too. You'd rather use a crankbait or even a live minnow? They'll gladly take those as well. There's just a lot of different ways you can fish for a bass, and I think that's great for variety. I, for one, love a fish where I can target them in multiple different ways and still get results. They are a very aggressive predatory fish with voracious appetites at the end of the day, so when they're hungry, they'll eat just about anything you put in front of their face. Bass also are a very great fighting fish pound for pound, especially certain species like smallmouth and spotted bass. I personally have the most experience with smallmouth, and they really are a great fight. They dash around, jump out of the water, and put up overall great fights. A 4 to 5 pound smallmouth is one of my favorite fish to catch. Something I really enjoy about bass too is how easy they are to handle. As much as I like fish with teeth, like pike and walleye, just because it looks so freaking cool, I will admit unhooking these fish are never fun. With bass, you really don't have to worry about getting bit as they don't have teeth. And some, like the largemouth, even have huge mouths. So usually unhooking them is very quick and easy. Bass also are a great beginner fish for kids because of this, as with the multitude of different techniques to target them, and with their ease of handling, they generally are a great fish to target with kids. I certainly started fishing for bass when I was very young. Now, while I think these positives are great, they certainly have some drawbacks, and some pretty big ones too. So I think it's about time we get into the bad category. For the bad category, there's no better place to start with the fact that bass have been widely introduced all over the world. Really, they have become one of the most invasive fish. To put it into perspective, the largemouth bass is invasive to Asia, Europe, Africa, and South America. Even here in the States, the largemouth bass has been widely introduced to pretty much the entirety of the northeast of the US, with them being in New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Maine, and many more. Not to mention they have even been introduced into Canada. These fish have displaced countless native species either by predation or competition, all because people like to catch them. This is definitely one of the worst qualities of a lot of bass fishermen, as many will display a bass elitist perspective on bass species. They'll be happy to throw off native species by adding bass to somewhere where they weren't meant to be naturally. Even worse, some will target and kill other native species that will compete with the bass simply because they compete with the bass. At the very minimum, these elitists will get mad at you for eating the bass. A lot of this stems from the US's treatment of bass in the 1800s, where they attempted to grow larger bass. They wanted to have anglers catch 10-pound bass every cast, which is crazy. Their way of doing this was to classify certain species that compete with the bass as rough fish. Funny enough, this approach results with smaller bass, as the bass overcrowd and compete for food, resulting in them being smaller. However, this could be a video in and of itself. This somewhat leads onto my next negative with bass. They aren't that big at the end of the day. As much as I like catching them, I'm well aware there are bigger and more powerful predatory fish at the end of the day. Bass are not on top of the food chain. It's just the reality of it. And as much as some inbreds will kill off fish like bowfin, to protect the bass, it won't change that fact. Most days, I'd rather catch a pike over a bass. They're bigger, stronger, and will go after a wide variety of fish-mimicking lures. Or I'd take a huge carp or catfish that can easily quadruple the size of your typical bass. Overall, I have to say that bass fishing is overrated. It's become so mainstream that we are willing to kill other native species of fish just to get our precious bass. And while the big bass can be amazing fighters, most bass are just average. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm a bass hater. I'm really not. I enjoy going after smallmouth a lot due to their ferocity on the end of the line. I even made a video about them. I've been a bass fisherman most of my life, where I have met plenty of great bass fishermen. To me, there's two types of bass fishermen. The bass elitist, who have half a brain and think having only bass and sunfish in every waterway across the United States is a good thing, and your average bass fisherman, who just likes to catch them and won't disrupt other native species. Also, professional bass fishermen are just douchebags.
All right. Yep, caught a 15.
Well, that's all I got for you on why I think bass fishing is overrated. I hope I didn't make too many of you mad, but honestly, it's the truth. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and I'll see all of you in the next video. Take care.